Welcome to Tone Talks.
How's everybody doing today? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. I wanted to start off by saying Happy New Year's to everyone out there, and I hope everyone had a happy holidays. I'm here to have a discussion about what we need to look forward to doing as we turn this corner and we look into a new year with a new tax reform plan fully signed into law by Donald Trump last week, and the impacts that'll have on black life. Whether you're a college student, or a single mother of two, or a senior, we're looking at drastic changes to the budgets that support your life. Like I've said in prior videos, from Pell Grants to Head Start to even Medicare cuts, we're talking about things that could drastically impact all of middle America, but pretty much all of black America. And it's time to take stock. It's time to be the kind of adult that sits down and writes a list about how this can impact you, where the programs are that come into your home, so that you can be prepared to understand and explain not only to yourself but to others around you why things are changing, so you don't get depressed when something gets cut and you understand where it's coming from. Everybody says, what's the solution? Well, part of the solution is knowing. You got to stop playing around. It's time to know. That's 2018, the year of no. And so what I want to say is we need to understand what the impact is of data. You know, I did a piece in the Los Angeles Sentinel, pulling it up right now. Thank you, shout out to the largest black newspaper in black in LA, I believe on the West Coast as well. They allowed me to show that the middle black family in this city is worth $200 liquid. Well, that's not enough to stave off the consequence of not only the legacy of poverty and enslavement, but also the coming realities of expectation and aspiration in the middle of extreme wealth calcification and tax reform. You don't have enough. And I think that part of that honesty, part of that solution, is sitting down and writing down where those shortfalls are. I think that the unique experience of blackness should show up on your Thanksgiving, in the sense that your family, largely, even if you're a professional, is one off from drastic amounts of failure most often. Like, you'll have a cousin that's in and out of jail, you'll have a close sister even who's on welfare or TANF. You'll get all of these realities of the impact of a legacy of oppression immediately upon you, but one step off of you maybe. Or even it could be you. You could be a college student that's getting food stamps. And I think for us, what we have not dealt with is not just how pervasive that is in our community, but we also have not dealt with the reality of what does that mean if that's cut away then. You know, we think of white America as receiving just as much as us. What we know by the data is that we're 13 to 14% of the population. Now, I'm not here to deal with the conservative talk about people need to get our food stamps. Well, they needed to not enslave us and then put us through Jim Crow and steal all of our wealth, and then ask us to be here in this wealthy country with no wealth, competing against everyone from white wealth to new immigrants who bring in wealth from foreign countries, and then we're forced to compete directly with their wealth from other countries, and without them having come from slavery. It's insane what's going on. And I use a specific group as a great contrast. Imagine being Cameroonian, pulling up a Wikipedia now, and what you find is that almost like the bulk of Cameroonians that come here are professionals, nurses, engineers, doctors. Imagine going to Thanksgiving and everybody's a nurse, doctor, or engineer. Imagine the support system that's around you. I think for black America, what we don't understand is that professionals of all ilks, of all ethnicities, from Cameroonians to Jewish peoples, are experiencing this, but we're not. We're in isolation. And it's time to take stock of what that isolation means and what the impact of budget cuts and tax reform is going to be on your immediate life. So what do I mean by take stock? I believe that it's time to get honest and sit down and do a listing of the immediate connected people by list that are connected to you, sister, brother, auntie, grandma, and write down what they received from the government in general. Now, some things you won't know. I mean, a lot of us don't understand the breadth of U.S. government's involvement in our lives, but you can write down grandma, Medicare, and then you can talk to her and figure out what she all receives and what she's going to need this next year. Maybe there's a surgery coming up and there's a gap of $3,000 now. Well, you need to figure out if that's going to jump to $5,500. Don't wait till the week before the surgery for the LASIK surgery and she come to you that week and tell you, oh, it's going to be like $3,000 and it's next week, deal with it now. Don't wait till Head Start cuts. Start looking at programs all around the, Head Start is the program for your kindergartner. If you have a kindergartner or your sister has a kindergartner, it's time to realize that they might cut the program that allows them to go to preschool now. How do you deal with that? What are the costs of preschools in your local area? Part of the way that Black America has resolved being in America is to deny and ignore it all the way. We talk to each other on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Hello, bye. Everything's good because the government's taking care of programs. Well, it's not. Now that's going to be cut out. I don't believe that it should be. I think we should give reparations. But I'm dealing with the factual reality that's about to be cut out of your life. Am I saying they're going to cut everything? No, but I'm saying there's going to be drastic cuts coming. And part of my video today is to say that this new year, this resolution is about us getting honest. It's about us looking at ourselves in the mirror and realizing the consequence of coming from slavery and the impact of Jim Crow on our lives. Maybe then we'll get a little more frustrated and do politics. What's a trip about our people is we really don't understand that we have like 3 kinds of jobs. Now, before I even say the kinds of jobs, I'm going to tell you, Thomas Shapiro of Black Wealth, White Wealth interviewed him. You can check out the video. Talked to him, he said there's something called occupational segregation, and black people are represented in a few professions, like 4 or 5 to the actual percentage of the population. Forget having a job where we're 80% of the job. No, I'm talking about where we're more than 13% of that job nationally. Like 4 or 5, and they're like post office, janitorial. It's not doctors, lawyers, engineers. Those are nominal jobs for us. When I say nominal, we're like, we might not even register a percent in some of these professions. Despite our whole aspirational idea of that this is like a common goal as a result of everything from the Cosby Show to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You can debate that another day whether that's good or bad. What I'll tell you now, it's delusional. It's fantastical. Now, the reason why I bring that up is in context of the 3 kinds of jobs that we're actually seeing. And when I say jobs, I'm not even dealing with the type. I'm dealing more so with the space that we occupy in the employment market. So African Americans, in my view, generally speaking, occupy 3 spaces. There's the first space, pulling up a picture now. Black people who basically can't find work. Can't find work. I mean, I don't think we understand the amount of black people that can't find work today. I've shown before that black male unemployment in 30 major cities is like over 40%. The census brought that up, pulling it up now. The second group is the patchwork group, where you got underemployment. You have Uber here, and you work at Macy's seasonally, and you do these contract jobs for a secretarial service that you get hired, or you're a day laborer. That's a large bulk of our people. Those people are not stable, but they still having families and everything else like they are stable, and they don't understand that you can't project stability. You are stable or you aren't. Now, I believe you should be stable because you come from me. You come from African Americans. You come from people that built this place. But you are not stable. And you have to start assessing that in terms of understanding what these pay cuts, what these pay-go cuts that I'll talk about in a second, these budget cuts, what tax reform means to your life. Now, the third group is an interesting one, because it's this group that really doesn't understand. You don't register either, but they are used by capital to make it seem like black America is largely okay. And what I call this group is the worker-lots. So you make 85 or 115, but you work all the time. What you find is that, whether you're a nurse, whether you're an attorney at a big firm, I mean, you working like 75 hours a week. You work at night for 12 hours. I understand you only work 3 or 4 days a week, but it's like an odd schedule where you work a whole lot. You just like drained afterwards. So you work 12 hours, and then the next day is not really an off day because you work through that, you sleep through that day. Or for that matter, for you to make that money that you making for those 12 hours, you from Atlanta, but you gotta live in these different places, Idaho and Bakersfield in California. You gotta go travel around to work. I don't think we understand that that's not stable in a whole nother way. We think of that as better because we're looking at the other 2 groups. We're not registering that we should be living better than this, and we're not registering the impact of living like this on our lives. This group, the worker-lots, what they tend to create is this narrative of like, I have a good upper middle class life. Well, upper middle class is measured by stability. If you gotta travel around for work, you ain't too stable. And so like, I say this to say there's a whole nother group of white Americans that we don't understand that are stable because of multi-generational wealth. This country, pulling it up again, Ray Diallo, one of the richest men in this country, did an article just recently about how wealth inequality is the number one issue in the world. Period. Point blank. And what he showed in this chart that I'm pulling up is that we live in a time that's moving back to like the Great Depression. And labor is not the game. It's multi-generational wealth. I'm telling you that not to make you feel defeated, so that you understand when somebody brings to your doorstep that you are your problem, and you do work, or you do try to look for work, or you do try to do patchwork work, you're doing your part. It's just this government is failing you. This New Year's is about taking stock, understanding your place in this country, what you're due, what you're owed, and what you're going to demand. Now, you can't do that if you think that overwork is actually okay. You can't do that if you looking at your overwork and you saying, at least I have a job. Don't get me wrong, you need to appreciate that you have a job, but you also need to understand that there's a quality of life that comes from being in a first world country that we, as descendants of American slavery, deserve. Now, we don't have a trust fund group. We don't understand that there's a whole group of white folks in the top 15%. You know, I've shown it in the prior article I did based on the Federal Reserve data, maybe about a month ago. The top 15% of white folks is worth $1 million. White families, $1 million, $1 million or more. Do you understand that if you're in that group, everybody at Thanksgiving is worth $850, $1.5 million, $3 million? Forget what the gifts look like. Just think about what that means in terms of when grandma needs a hip surgery, everybody can put in $500 or $1,000. It doesn't just fall on the overworked person to try to take some money that they don't have because they got to support their own children to come up with that, because nobody talked about it ahead of time and did the list that I just told y'all to do. Now, I'm telling you all this as a solution that might not feel like a solution. I'm not giving out lottery tickets. I'm giving out blackness in its full form. And so, like, when we start looking at this thing now, I bring it to tax reform, what we're going to see is several kinds of cuts. Now, you have, of course, Trump's budget, which is horrendous. I'll talk about that in a second. But before we get there, we have something called a pay-go cuts. Pay-as-you-go cuts, implemented in 2010 during Barack Obama's administration to try to rein in government. Pay-go requires that any legislation that adds to the federal deficit be paid for with either spending cuts or an increase in revenue to offset. The problem is we just changed the whole ballgame of what the government has with tax reform. The government is operating, I mean, if you think about it like your car, imagine like going from having a half tank to being on that place between the quarter and the empty all the time. And so I feel like we don't understand what the impact of that is generally on middle America, but on everybody's life that made our life feel like it was stable. Feel like it was stable. It wasn't stable though. Meaning like everybody from your grandma to your sister I mentioned earlier to your brother that's in and out of jail. Now, does he have somewhere to stay when you get out? Does your sister still get food stamps, or you got to call her in here to be hungry? It's a difference calling somebody full on food stamps versus somebody that's hungry. So let's talk about the cuts. Let's talk about the pay-go cuts. And let's talk about them in detail. You have $255 million from the Department of Education, Department of Education's Higher Education Department. You have $3.5 billion, billion with a B, from the Department of Educational Rehab Services. You have $25 billion from Medicare. You have $26 million from TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families. This is food and stuff, food stamps and stuff like that. You have $1.7 billion from social services block grants. These are big grants that are given to cities to do a lot of different things for your local community, from homeless shelters and everything else. Just gone. Just gone. I mean, I don't think we understand how intertwined our lives is. So let's say your mama's brother has been at a homeless shelter. And so like, he cool, we talk to him, but he at the homeless shelter. What happens when that shelter gets shut down? He coming to Thanksgiving next year, Are you ready to deal with the reality of being a black American that gotta pay as we go? We not. I just told you the middle black. Look. I know it's redundant for those people that watched it before, but we kind of gotta say it. Middle black family in this country is worth $4,000 without the family car, all in, not liquid. All of their stuff together. You take out the TV and the clothes and stuff that should not be counted because it's depreciating asset. You're down to like $1,500. I mean, we got a race of people that talk real big but don't have no wealth. And I just want to give you the answer so that you understand. Lay your family out. They talk about family trees. Do a family wealth tree. My uncle worked this. My grandma worked this. My mama worked this. Lay it all out so you can see. You can do it in your mind, but I would prefer you did it on paper. I know it hurts. So that we can get prepared and then start looking at what everybody thinks that they need in life for the next year. Is there enough there? Is there enough there? And if there isn't enough there, y'all need to have a discussion. This is the solution. 2018 about to bring that heat. And so I'm here just to prepare you, get you ready, let you understand that they are not playing anymore. That we are on the verge of something very, very different. A shift. I only think we can parallel in our life to Reaganomics, but that doesn't even tell the story, because as I pull up the chart again, Reaganomics happened during the best part of this chart that I just pulled up again. This is during a time where it's almost similar to the Depression in terms of this chart is the wealth share by the top 0.9% and the wealth share by the bottom 90. We're about to be the same again and have tax reform. You know, I think there's so much going on. Trump has a budget. I'm pulling up the article. I want you guys to go look at this thing. This is my solution. Go read this article about the amount of cuts that he's proposing. See how these cuts impact your life. Spend the next 24 to 48 hours understanding how your life intertwines with government so you can understand when government falls short on you and make demands of your politician. Don't let that hit me or I'm going to go off. I'm going to be at the council member meeting. There's not going to be no more. You can just rely on government to do right. You got to make the government do right by making the demands, using your vote, using your voice. Now, the last thing I'm going to say to you is I want to go to, because this is just part of the story. What we have is a larger narrative, and I want to read something from Paul Ryan, head of the House. And what Paul Ryan says, and I'm pulling it up now, in the Weekly Standard in 2003, he said the last great vestiges of welfare state promoted collectivist mentality, created a generation of dependency, eroded financial independence, and self-reliance. So a group of black folk that were used as shoes basically are now being told it's your fault that you shoes, with no corrective action done to make sure that we were made whole. They're talking about changing everything around you. I'm saying the first step is to understand what's around you. Then you might be able to stand in the way of those changes. This is Tone Talks. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please go to tonetalks.org, subscribe and donate. We're going to keep this discussion going because it's important. Happy New Year's.